forget this has all been a trajectory of growth. So, but the core solution, the core thing we're looking for out of all this is really beginning to understand the patterns that control you. Like I said, you don't overeat every moment. You don't get angry every moment. You don't smoke every moment. You do it when you get in a certain state, when you're bored, or you're angry, or you're sad, or you're lonely. How many follow what I'm talking about? It's not every moment. It's something triggers that pattern, right? And so I want you to begin to understand that. So think of it this way. There's really, with my 5 kids and 5 grandkids, I think we all know the world is changing. If you read some of the studies that are done, at Cambridge and some of the major universities right now, they're all talking about between AI, nanotechnology, and robotics, we're going to be in a very different world very quickly. Not like 20 years from now, like in the next 3 to 8 years, there's going to be giant transformations. AI being one of the biggest, of course. And about 55% of the current jobs, they say, will go. They're going to disappear because you'll be replaced. Well, I know that concerns people. It should. If you look around at something as simple as, let's say, self-driving cars, they're not really effective yet, but they will be. I don't know, is it going to be 3 years, 5 years? But when they do, there's 8 million Uber drivers, truck drivers, taxi drivers. And what are they going to do? Who's going to hire a truck driver who can only drive 8 hours a day when they can get a self-driving truck that goes 24 hours a day, less insurance costs, no health care costs, and they can write down, the cost of that thing over time, depreciation. So those 8 million jobs, by the way, that's how many we lost during the world economic crisis in 2008 here in the U.S. And it had that devastating effect. So things are going to change. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 80% of America was farmers. Now it's 3%, and we feed the whole world because of technology. Now there's all these new jobs. No one thought back then in farming there'd be such a thing as, somebody that would manage, the web for you, or a webmaster, or whatever the case may be. There's going to be plenty of new jobs that'll be needed. But we're going to have to retool ourselves. So how can you step into this future and be confident that you can do well? How can you make sure your kids and grandkids can? You need 3 skills. Please jot them down. They're very simple because we've been talking about patterns here, right? The first skill that will change your life is when you get good at pattern recognition. That's number 1, pattern recognition. Now, when you can recognize a pattern, it takes away your fear. Because it's no longer chaos. Like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. This has never happened before. What's happening politically, what's happening with wars around the country, what's around the world, what's happening with inflation has happened multiple times on every 80-year cycle. And so this is not new. And when you recognize a pattern, you're not fearful anymore. You can actually start to be in control if you master the second skill, which is pattern utilization. See, if you look at anyone, think of someone you think is masterful. It could be a comedian. It could be an actor or an actress. It could be a great athlete. It could be, somebody amazing at running businesses. It could be somebody who's a great financial trader. If you know anyone who's really great at anything, they have these 2 skills for sure. They know how to recognize patterns in the financial markets or in a business. They know how to recognize what movements will affect you most if they're a dancer, or what sounds will touch you deepest if they're a great singer. But they not only recognize it, but they learn to use those patterns to get the results that they really want. And if you work at this, you can get to a third skill, and that's the ultimate skill, and that's where you actually have pattern creation. That's when you start to become masterful at something. It's kind of like if my daughter, I'm watching her learn to play the piano, and how does she learn to play the piano? You first learn someone else's patterns, someone else's music. And you practice it, and you learn to recognize what things do, and you learn how to do it and use it and get the result. But after she's played enough at some stage, she will start to create her own patterns, her own songs, right? And that's pretty much what's happened in my life. I've studied all these books and patterns and all these different ways of creating change, and then gradually as the decades went by, I started to create my own as well.